Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Underwater Photography Show. I'm Matthew Sullivan,
And I'm Alex Mustard.
and we have yet another interview for you guys today. So the less of us talking, probably the better. So today we have Nicolas Remy on. Most of you watching probably know who he is. He has become quite a big name in the underwater photography community for good reason. He's a very talented shooter, and he's also the founder of the Underwater Club. Um, I actually didn't entirely know what that was
That's why we got him
before.
on, really, was, yeah,
Yeah,
because I think
exactly.
a lot of
So,
people, aren't familiar with these things.
yeah.
And they are, I think, they are something new in underwater photography. So I was really keen, as well as to get him to show us some pictures, to explain all about it, for not just for Matt, but for everyone else as well.
It's one of those things I keep seeing it pop up everywhere, but I
Mm.
had never actually really looked into what it is. But again, like you said, that's one of the reasons we had him on. And then as well, you can't have a great underwater photographer on without talking about underwater photography in general. And I believe you guys went out, talked about his, at least a little bit about wildlife photographer of the year, or at
Yeah,
least
and,
mentioned it.
and particularly about his use of rebreathers, because he's
Mhm.
one of the few stills photographers who's using a rebreather almost the whole entire time. And I
Yeah.
thought it was just really interesting to talk about that, what it's like. And I was kind of just asking questions I wanted to know about, like how it is, maneuvering around subjects, both the advantages and disadvantages compared to open circuit. So that
It's
was
it's
fun to chat about.
it's fun timing too because I have a friend who just did an article for Dive Photo Guide all on rebreathers for underwater photography because he dives one
Mm,
exclusively and hasn't dived open circuit in 15 years or something like that. And he exalts rebreathers for underwater shooting. So it'll be interesting to see how his article and whatever and Nico's comments have in common
yeah.
or not. Um, but with that, enough of us talking and rambling, and let's welcome Nicholas to the show.
Hello, Nicolas. It's great to have you on the Underwater Photography Show. And we were really keen to get you on, not only to say congratulations on your recent success in the Wildlife Photographer of the Year, but also because I think, as I can see from behind you, you are the founder of a really unique organization in underwater photography, the Underwater Club. And we'll definitely get on to talk about that. But I'd also like to say thank you for joining us all the way from Australia. Although when I finally let you talk, everyone will realize that you're not necessarily a native Aussie.
Well, it's going to be hard to hide my accent, that's for sure. But Alex, thank you for to Matt and yourself for the invitation to be on the show today. Yes, so I'm originally French born, but I live in Australia now. I've been living in Sydney for the past 7 years, and actually I'm now French and Australian at the same time. But yeah, the accent I guess gives me away very quickly.
Well, I know there's lots of people around Sydney with English accents as well. So there's big migration from Northern Europe out there
Yeah.
to that wonderful part of the world. Um, I was really keen to get you on because I just think the Underwater Club is such a great idea for photographers. I spent a great part of my early years as an underwater photographer, almost living in isolation, because I just didn't know any other underwater photographers, didn't know how to meet other underwater photographers, didn't know where to go to get good information. And I think the Underwater Club does solve a lot of that. I'm being careful not to put photography into it because I know you have a shorter name than that. I always remember the name because TUC for the Underwater Club. The TUC is a big union organization in here in the UK. So it always makes me smile and it always helps me remember.
And the way I remember it is it's also the name of a very popular biscuit that my wife's grandmother used to love back in France. So I think you have it as well in the UK. So yeah, that's another one.
Maybe you'll get a sponsorship from them one day.
Who knows? That would be fantastic. Tech ambassador. But yeah, so thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, Tug has been, or the Underwater Club has been a project that has been in my head for many years, which I brainstorm a lot with my wife, also an underwater photographer, for the exact reasons that you mentioned. When we started underwater photography, we were really feeling ourselves isolated from, other people of our sharing our passion. And we studied, reading books, doing a lot of trial and errors with a lot of errors involved, and we thought that there had to be a better way. So here we are 16 years later.
Yeah, and I think what's great is that the internet age has allowed specialist small activities like underwater photography to have, you know, these sort of specialist media that really can cope for things in specialist organizations. So before we get into talking about the Underwater Club, though, I don't want to forget that you are a fantastic underwater photographer, and we love nothing more than looking at underwater photos on here. So I'm going to ask you to show us a few of your pictures so we can see some of your photos, particularly those I think from Australia, where you live.
Sounds good. So let me try and get the sharing started. So yeah, just to start off, I thought I would pick a photo from one of probably my favorite dive sites. You know, when you get the odd question, hey, what's your very favorite dive site? It's very hard to answer, but I've decided that my answer is going to be this place, and that has been the case for a few years. So this photo was taken in a place which is 5 hours drive north of Sydney. It's called Southwest Rocks, although the dive site is named Fish Rock. And
I've done the drive and the dive as so.
Oh, you know the place already.
Yeah,
Yes.
but many people don't. So and I've never seen it looking quite like this, I have to say.
It doesn't always look like this, but maybe I'll do a bit of an introduction for our listeners. So Fish Rock is quite special. It's a rocky island which sits right on the East Australian current, which is, if you've seen Finding Nemo, that's the highway. That's where, you know, they surf and they take the highway with the turtle, the Nemo's father, and those guys. So it's full of life. It hits these rocks, which is a network of underwater canyons and a 120 meters swim-through cave in the middle. And as if that was not enough, this is a place where there's a natural aggregation of grainless sharks. So these guys that in the US you would call sand tiger sharks. In South Africa, I think they're ragged-tooth sharks.
Yeah, they call them raggies,
yeah. So you do see those sharks all year round, but they're usually scattered a little bit around the island. And what happened these days, there was a bit of upwelling causing thermocline, and the sharks all wanted to get a bit of warmer water, so they happened to gather really tightly in this canyon. Where
this is the exit of the swim through, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, you know the dive site very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the exit of the swim through, and this is also very shallow, so it was a place where they could get, you know, 1 or 2 more degrees Celsius, and they were happy to hang out there. And I mean, you and I were chatting about Rebreathers before. That's one of those times where I really loved the Rebreather I took there. We were the only ones in the water with my wife, just for the fact that people do double tank dive boats, and we can do a straight 3 hours dive and stay in a surface interval. So that was us, the only 2 human beings all around Fish Rock, enjoying this aggregation of sharks. And because we don't release any bubbles, we're not noisy, and obviously I tried to stay as cool as I could. We had this very natural behavior, and, you know, the sharks going very close to us and yielding some really good photos. So it was a great memories of mine.
Yeah, fantastic. I've never done any photography on a rebreather, and it's easy to think of the advantages, you know, which is no bubbles, the silent moving, the long run times, the ability to, you know, really wait for that moment. But I also, how do you deal with some of the disadvantages? And I think the two that I would sort of pick up on is, the first one is the fact that rebreathers take a lot more looking after during a dive than an open circuit, which you can kind of ignore and just think of photography. And then the other one is the how you make those minute changes to your position in the water, which obviously as an open circuit diver, you do a lot of, you know, breathing out just to sink a little bit to improve your angle. I kind of, how do you deal with first of all looking after the rebreather and staying safe, and then secondly learning to make those small adjustments without the ability to breathe out or hold your breath slightly to make, you know, small changes to depth and therefore viewpoint?
It does take a little bit of a fair bit of practice to actually really become comfortable with the units or the rebreather, although that depends on what model you dive. So for a long time I've been diving what is called CCR, closed circuit rebreather, and these are the ones you probably have in mind when you talk about all the looking after you have to do during the dive. You have to check on a regular basis that the gas you're breathing is still safe to breathe, amongst a few other things. After a while, you get used to it, especially if you dive the rebreather all the time, like Lena and myself have been doing. It becomes second nature. Now, nowadays, there are some more recreational rebreathers, which take a bit less looking after. I also dive, especially when I travel, I dive a Mares Horizon, which is a semi-closed rebreather. And this one is much more simple. You should be looking at your gas and what you're breathing on a regular basis, but the reality is in practice, it doesn't change that much. And maybe this is not the time to get into all the details, but it's much easier and safer to use. So that's probably a better entry point for photographers into the rebreather world to use something like that.
And then I just really to that second question I had was about learning the slightly different diving techniques to be able to control your position in the water. I know clearly that's going to come with experience, but have you got any tips for people when they're starting out?
It's a lot about being conscious of the fact that, yes, you lose that flexibility of, dropping a lot of gas or taking a big inhale to change your depth. You do lose that. And you train yourself when you look at an obstacle in the water. If you see a bommy, for example, as an open circuit diver, you would typically inhale, swim above it, and get on the other side. As a rebreather diver, you get trained to actually go around it. And look, if you really have to go above it or go down because there's a photographic opportunity, by all means, that's what I would do. But on a general basis, you try to avoid depth variations. Generally, I think this has given me much more photographic opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise than the ones it's taken away. All the scenarios where you're shooting something that's above you and there's no bubble to be worried about, that's super helpful. There have been a few scenarios where I was a bit frustrated, say, diving with sea lions, fur seals, when they go up and down. And other divers have no problem going to the surface, going back in shallow water.
We're not supposed to go up and down that quickly either, though.
You're not supposed to, but yeah, you know what we see when we're down there. And with a rebreather, you're like, okay, I'm just going to wait a little bit for the fur seals to come down.
So your next picture takes us to a different part of Australia, I think. So if we roll on to the next one.
Absolutely. So the next one is about 2,000 kilometers southwest. We're now in South Australia, next to the capital city, Adelaide, in this state. And what we're looking at now is a leafy sea dragon. So if you like seahorses like me, well, you're going to love the sea dragons. They're like seahorses on steroids. They're also endemic to Australia. You only find them in this country. And this particular individual, the leafy sea dragon, you only find it in chunks of the southern coast. So the reason I picked this photo amongst a few others is it's a bit different from the rest of sea dragon imageries I've taken. On this one, I'm using a technique that I really like. It has several names. I call it creative motion blurs, which is really creating abstract photography out of blurring the background and moving the camera to create patterns with what's around the animal. And I was again on a rebreather for that dive. Although it wasn't really deep, it allowed me to stay for more than 4 hours in the location where I did manage to spot 3 sea dragons. And it was a busy public holiday where lots of divers were coming and going. So, if you're just on a 1-hour dive, your photographic opportunities might be limited because, well, someone else is actually taking the shot and there might be someone waiting and you want to work quicker and give them some space. So my chance during that dive was I was there for 4 hours. If someone came in, I would swim away, let them do their thing. Once everyone was out, I was back with the dragons. I had spotted 3 of them and I could take all the time I wanted to see which ones seemed relaxed enough for me to get really close and, to take more photos. And at some point, there was a time where the sun went overcast with clouds. It all went darker, which is perfect conditions for that technique because you want to be able to use a very slow shutter speed. So I played a bit with this, and that's one of my favorite results as a photo and one I really like.
Yeah, I really like the textures in the background of this shot and the color combination of the gold and yellow of the sea dragon against that lovely blue water. And I think that makes the picture very, very successful. It's not just about, the technique really works well with the choice of subject matter, the color balance, and having those interesting textures from the habitat that the sea dragon lives in. And of course, it's such a amazing subject anyway. I always love any picture of a sea dragon. So yeah, I like you, I'm a seahorse lover. And Yes, there's no better seahorse or member of the seahorse family than the sea dragons.
Thank you. No, thank you. And I think with this technique is it's a lot about the abstraction. But I guess if we want the public or viewers to be engaged, to be connected to the image, it has to make sense. And for me, the sense I see in this photo is the sort of tribal patterns created by the leaves and how they sort of connect with the camouflage of the dragon.
Yeah,
So,
it's for me, it definitely still tells a strong natural history story about the camouflage of the dragon and how it fits into that environment. And yeah, such an amazing animal. Okay, let's have a look at the next picture.
next one. So next one, we're actually taking a flight now north to North Sulawesi, a place you and I both love to dive. This was in Lembe, staying with our common friends from Lembe Resort. So what I was doing during that dive is shooting a review of an accessory for the Nauticam EMWL. So the accessory being the angled relay, which lets you at an angle from the bottom. So I was looking for subjects and scenes that were going to illustrate that capability. And as you know, the hornet ghost fish, they don't live in midwater. They tend to over around the reef or over the bottom. So what the lens allowed me to do is to really go on the sand and still have that blue water behind the two animals. And next to them, my good friend Fendi and one of my favorite dive guides over there, we have been diving a lot together. He knows precisely what I'm expecting in terms of modeling. And what I found really impressive is although the front of my lens is tiny, he is able to picture where to go for the photo. We've taken a whole series of this scene with the male, the female, and he modeling on the back. And I had very little to tell him about how to adjust his position. It just came, naturally without me doing much there.
No, it's really nice as well that you share the credit, because I think these shots, pictures of any marine life with a model, the model has put a huge amount of effort into the shot as well. So it's very nice to hear you praising the model and Fandy in particular for making this picture work. I like this shot. I like that you've got great separation between obviously the male in the middle, the female on the side, and they're just really nicely positioned, not overlapping. And they do seem to be looking like they're both looking at the seabed, like they're looking for food. You get the feeling that they're just going about their lives. They're not at all bothered about what you're doing. And I really like that aspect of the image as well. But for me, I love the shape of an ornate ghost pipefish. And that male is just so perfect in terms of seeing its shape in the middle there, which is, for me, they're all about shape. And I love any photo that shape really comes across really well. So yeah, very, very nice. Okay,
and once again, the rebreathers. So I was diving the Maris Horizon this time, and the rebreather also helps me to get very close to these guys without, I guess, being too disturbing. Okay. Next one. So another thing I like to do, I must say I'm more of a wide angle person, but I love shooting fish portraits. And when I shoot fish portraits, I'm always hoping to capture some sort of character. And by that, I mean that if someone looks at the photo, they're going to want to use human emotion to describe the subject. And I don't know if that's what you're seeing, Alex, but what people usually comment when they look at this photo is, oh my God, he looks really angry. And I've named this photo Anglerfish.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So he looks like he's waiting for his morning coffee and he needs it soon.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's another photo taken in Australia. This one is in my hometown now. It's in the south of Sydney, about 2 kilometers from the international airport.
Oh, nice. Oh, very cool. Yeah, no, really, really nice shot. I presume this is lit with single strobe from the top, maybe with a snoop, maybe not. And I think that also the way it brings out the texture in the frogfish. I know you call them anglerfish in Australia, but they're frogfish to me. With the for me, frogfish, my first reaction always with frogfish is single strobe. I just think they suit single strobe so well. And I won't always shoot them with single strobe, but it's my first way to go. And I think that strong top-down lighting is what generates the character in this picture. The angle helps, but it's your lighting choice as well that I think really helps this picture come alive and be full of character. And there's those great, sort of bluey eyes. They're really piercing, and they grab your attention.
Yeah, the eyes do stand out, and you're spot on. It's a single strobe with a snoot from above. Quite a. I was going to say a standard position, but with more of a vertical angle than usual to create a bit of that shadow in the mouth and below the eyes. But yeah, exactly as you said.
Yeah, very cool. Right, we need to save some time to talk about the Underwater Club. So let's whiz on to your last picture, which is an amazing shot. Is it? I have no idea where this is taken, but it reminds me a bit of Nelson Bay, the view.
So the forest on the back could look like Nelson Bay. It's actually taken in the south of New South Wales. Okay. So picture this local small town when, like in many coastal towns in Australia, there is a boat ramp for fishers and boaters to go. From the boat ramp, they clean their catch at the end of the day, and they attract a number of rays. So these are southern rays. And the locals try to do something similar that what we have seen in the Cayman Islands. They feed a bit more of the rays to keep them as a staying in the bay. We knew about this. We drove a couple of hours to go and have a snorkel with the kids. Now the story and the reason I picked this photo is for the memories behind, really. So we went there with the kids. My oldest son Alex was 8 years old at the time. The water is not that warm, and I had no conviction that he would actually be willing to go in the water. So I went there with my D500 at the time, my big dome, just to take a few photos. No big hopes either, because the visibility is maybe 2 or 3 meters, maybe maximum there. But we just took a few memory shots, and I was photographing a ray, and then I turned, and I was really joyful because I turned and I saw my son, who not only jumped in the water, forgetting about, there might be some water in my mask, it's a bit cold, totally oblivious of all that. He jumped in the water and he took his TG6 camera and he went shooting next to me. And that just made my heart, pump very, very happily. And that's the best memory I have of this.
No, it's fantastic. It's going to cost you a lot of money in the long run, but
yeah. Well, I haven't sold my D500 and the nautical housing that we did. One reason is it's going to be big enough soon to be able to carry it. So I might hang on to it for that reason.
Yeah. No, I was only joking. It's absolutely fantastic. My daughter Isabella is younger than Alex, but I think when I get the chance, or she's only slightly younger, when I get the chance to dive with her for the first time, that's going to be an amazing moment in life. So yeah, I'm very envious that you're a step closer than I am at the moment to that. But yeah, fantastic. Really nice picture, really nice storytelling shot, and obviously so personal. I think that's an important message for any underwater photographer, really, is that it's the pictures that matter to you most that are your most important pictures. And it's great to see a picture that's really personal like this. Right. I did, though, want to make sure we gave plenty of time to the Underwater Club on this episode, because I do think it is something that is really unique. And I think it's also one of those things that it's quite hard to understand, because there's quite a lot that you do in the Underwater Club. So it's quite hard to sort of pigeonhole it. So it would be good if you can give us a run through of what the Underwater Club is, and also what the experience is like for someone who enrolls in it.
Sure. And look, Alex, thank you for the opportunity as well for sharing a bit of what we do with the Underwater Photography Show. So maybe I will start with the beginning, and I promise I've got only 5 visuals, so it won't be too long. But if I start with the beginning, the Underwater Club started firstly as a school. So it's an online underwater photography school, and it's also a community. But this is the coursework that got the whole thing started. So the way, when I started putting together everything I knew into a format of courses, originally I thought I might go, sequential, like the thing you can find on Udemy, step-by-step teaching. And then I stood back for a little bit and I thought, wait a minute, not every student is going to start as a first timer in underwater photography People will have experience in macro, wanting to move to wide angle, or the other side around. And anyways, I don't see learning underwater photography as something sequential. So this is the reason why all the courses and the lessons are arranged more as a mind map rather than just a sequence of you have to do A, B, C, and D. So the topics there are connected by their what makes sense together as opposed to any particular order. So when a student comes and starts to learn something, they go in any of the 7 courses, which are the orange labels. Within those labels, there's 5, 6, or 7 lessons, which are the white labels. And again, they can take them in any sort of order. If I move to the next visual, that's one example of how the teaching experience of the courses looks like. So there's a full-blown e-learning system built in the Underwater Club. So if someone takes one of the lessons, this is what they will see. On the left, that's what it looks like on a big display, laptop, tablet, TV. So you've got every lesson split into small topics. Each topic is a video, which is usually maximum 5 minutes long. And the concept here is that you can study a little bit of underwater photography whenever you've got 5 or 10 minutes of free time on the public transport, when you're waiting for something. It's also very easy to study on a phone, on any device, really. So when you've learned something, you can tick mark complete just for you to remember you've done it. And whenever the time is right, come back and continue. And each of the lessons comes with a quiz as well.
And I think that's, also great when you're in the field. You might have watched, the content when you first subscribe at home, and then you go on a trip, and between dives, nice, short, digestible chunks of knowledge to really transform your pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And if you think of the example of someone living in Sydney or maybe in the UK as well, in temperate waters where most likely you're shooting macro more often than wide angle. So your skills might be really sharp and you might have your lighting perfectly set and your knowledge for macro photography. And then every year you're going to go on a trip to the Maldives, the Red Sea, or Raja Ampat. So you might be a little bit rusty with wide angle. And yeah, that's a chance to come back to the wide angle courses and do a refresher before your trip. And I really like making it convenient and accessible for various people. I know one of our members told me, I didn't expect this, but she told me she's a very busy person. She's a mom with 2 kids. She's got a day job and she's a dive master in the weekends. And she told me she studies the courses in the gym at 5 a.m. in the morning. So she's doing a workout and at the same time she's listening to me and watching me talk about photography.
And seeing you also in this particular picture doing a very good impression of your subject. So.
Yeah. And maybe one last thing I wanted to say there. When I do a talk in a dive show, in a photography club or something, where I teach a topic or I show my images, or in a workshop, I'm like everyone, I show good photos because I want to look good. The reality, though, is you learn as well from the bad photos as you can learn from the good ones. That's how I see things. And in the courses of the Underwater Club, I show both sides of the story. So I usually go by saying, hey, this is what you want to do, and that's the reasons why. And if you don't do it, then that's the sort of photos you're going to get. So I try to, cover both aspects. Also because I'm conscious that people are not always having that option to ask me straight away a question if something is not complete. So I really want to make sure it's very as clear as possible. So the courses, the main body of courses that we've seen before, they cater really well for anywhere from your plain beginner up until intermediate, advanced underwater photographers. We also have members who are very experienced, award-winning photographers. And the main attraction for them is rather, I think it's more the webinars we do every month. So a webinar is a deep dive on a particular topic. It can be a location, it can be a technique, it can be a kind of subject. Sometimes I teach myself, but most of the time I prefer actually to invite someone else from the community that have a specific expertise. So for example, last year, Alex, we had the pleasure to have you for a discussion on the recent competition results, and you and I were sharing our perspectives on what were the best shots in our opinions in the categories. We've had very well-known people in the industry like Tobias covering wreck photography beautifully. Vanessa Mignon gave us a talk on whales photography. She's a very experienced trip leader She gave advice on where to go to book your whale trip and photography aspects, of course. Erin gave the members a crash course on Lightroom. It was really packed, 2 hours and a half, but full of great information. And also invite people who are not as well known in the community. And usually the reason is photography is not a career for them, and they're not particularly interested in competitions. So there's no obvious reason for all of us to know about them, but I just happen to be lucky to stumble upon their work. And when they're happy to share their knowledge on publicly, they become guests of the Underwater Club. And one of them is Steve Munoz, who gave us a great talk on nudie branch photography recently. He's really good at that. Anthony Berberian, he gave his first ever online talk on Blackwater. He's a category winner of WPY a few years ago. So that's something else we do. Very deep dives, at least 2 hours long, always with a Q&A session at the end.
No, really great. And I really like the fact that it's not, I mean, you've obviously got some well-known names there, but I really like the fact that you've got the chance to hear from really interesting photographers as well. Because, I do feel that sometimes, particularly at the dive shows, it's always a lot of the same names that you see time and time again. And you don't always necessarily hear from people who are doing really, really interesting photography. So yeah, that's really exciting.
It opens up a little bit of the field for and the next one, or one that, depending on when people watch, we have done recently, is an underwater photographer's guide to coral reefs, which is essentially a marine biology crash course tailored to underwater photographers, so that people understand a little bit more what to look for when they're on a tropical dive site, the behaviors, and where to find the subjects. So yeah, this is something I really love doing, finding the speakers, trying to identify what would be of interest to the members. We also run surveys from time to time to ask actually what sort of topics are of interest. But yeah, something I really love doing every month.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to coming back and speaking about this year's contest, or the upcoming contest as we record this. Actually, one thing I really like about doing it on the Underwater Club is because it's a private forum. You can be very honest and open and objective about things, and you're not there going, oh, I better not say this because it might hurt someone's feelings, or the organizers of the contest will definitely watch this and then they will be annoyed with me or something like that. It's nice just to be able to just say, we're just trying to be objective in our discussion. And I really enjoyed that. I remember last year. In fact, I did my talk to you about 2 miles from where I'm sitting now, because it was before we moved house, but we had come down to this part of the country to spend some time here to see if we wanted to move. And it was the week that we decided to move. And so I was here. So that's why I really remember doing the talk.
That's a good reason for you to come back again, definitely.
Yes. Yeah.
No, it was a fantastic conversation, and yeah, really looking forward to doing it again with you in a couple of months. Perhaps if we move to the next pillar of the Underwater Club. So when you or I teach a workshop, I think what people really like is obviously learning the theory, the skills, but then having some feedback about the photography and how well they did. So for people studying purely online in the Underwater Club, I'm not sitting next to the students. However, we have forums which are really geared towards photography feedback. That's a big pillar of what we do. And I invite every member to make use of that as much as they want. So we have a few forums where people can send their photos, and it can be a case of, hey, give me some feedback. Sometimes they have a specific question, like, is this good material for competition? And they're comfortable to do it again because the forums are private. The juries of the competitions are likely not going to see them. Is this good competition material? Or what do you think about my lighting? Or I really like the shot I've done, but can you suggest anything else I could have done with that subject? Then we've got other variations, such as help me choose between 2 photos. So that's a big part of what we do. And then we also have discussion topics on equipment and photographic techniques, as well as a club lounge for anything that doesn't fit in the above. And because of many of our members being keen to enter competitions, and even those who are more junior in the underwater photography journey, I do invite them and I do encourage to try competition whenever they want to get an additional feedback, an additional pair of eyes or many pair of eyes on their work. So we've got a section dedicated to competition. One of them is contest results, where we cheer members who had good results in recent competitions. An important one is upcoming contests. So I've been entering a lot of competitions in the past. So I keep tab of what's happening, and I make posts there to share the upcoming deadlines of any competition that might have some level of relevance to underwater photographers. So sometimes it's not a dedicated on the ocean photography contest. And if it's a contest I've entered before, I will give some extra information. If it's a contest where I've been awarded in the past, I will give a bit of behind the scenes information as well and advice. And if it's a contest I think that people should know about, but I don't really recommend them to enter for whatever reasons, there can be some reasons like that, I do as well say it, and I say, hey, this is the reasons why I wouldn't recommend to enter it, but up to you if you wish to do so.
Yeah, really cool. I mean, I know that so many photographers get frustrated by, missing competitions or missing out on competitions that they would have loved to enter. So yeah, really good. Sorry, there's an alarm going off in my house. Sorry. So
okay, the very last bit, and that's something we've introduced only a few weeks ago. So we're recording this in November, so it's recent in November. It's the underwater photography coffee chats. So what happened is at the beginning, the webinars were a little bit of a talk on a topic and a lot of discussion between the members. But because we're having so many good speakers giving really interesting talk, usually the talk runs down, and at the end we have 15, 20 minutes of Q&A. And sometimes it feels like we want to talk more. So in addition to the forum, this is another way for members to connect directly with me and with each other. So these are the first 3 sessions we run. The idea is to run 3 times 1 hour live sessions with me every month, and people get there really what they want to get. So in some of the sessions, it was more of a social event where everyone introduced each other, shared their photography. We talked about various things. Another event was people coming with their list of questions to me that they wanted answered. We did that as well. And there's one event where I picked a slot which probably didn't work for many people, and there was just one member coming. Well, we had a great time. We talked together, and this turned into a private coaching session for him, which he was really happy about, and I had a great time myself. So that's the last kid in the block in the underwater club.
Yeah, no, and great, and I think it answers what one of those things we said at the very beginning, that people can feel very isolated as underwater photographers if they're the only underwater photographer in their town or area. And I think this is a great way of helping people sort of develop peers and develop those friendships, because I think exactly what you say, your photographic friends and peers can really help you with just those little bits of advice that you don't need to ask an expert on, but you just need to speak to another underwater photographer. It's great when it comes to choosing contest shots, when you've got other photographers giving you honest, constructive feedback. I think that's fantastic. And I know, so I often say to lots of underwater photographers, you've definitely got the pictures in your on your Lightroom catalog to win these contests, but you're not entering the right ones and things like that. So, and then it's it's just really great, and this such a great way to learn. So I really applaud you for all the effort you've put into creating something so special, and I really hope that a lot of people watching this go and check it out and see if it looks right for them.
Thank you, Alex. I really appreciate it. Yeah. So, and if people check this out before Christmas or anytime, actually, all these courses and the membership itself can be gifted to someone else. So if you know someone who is into underwater photography or might want to get into underwater photography, you could gift as little as 1 month of subscription, or a full year, or a dedicated course, or things like that.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. And I shall, this is going to go out before Christmas. So that's a lot of underwater photography Christmas gifts sorted out. So thank you so much, Nicolas, for being on the show. And we look forward to having you back again in the future, and maybe, hear about how the Underwater Club, TUC, is growing.
Thank you, Alex. It was great to chat with you today, and yeah, look forward to have you on our webinars very soon as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. Bye bye.
Yes. Bye bye.